Hello, this is Christy. Today we will look at editing in Photoshop with smart objects, and we will look at why it's very useful and important to use smart objects when you're editing bitmaps in Photoshop, and not just bitmaps. Something I'm going to illustrate right now. If you see this object here, I'm going to copy this bitmap of my logo into the clipboard and go to a new document and paste it. Control V, and as you can see in Photoshop, it created a new layer with my pasted data. And if I zoom in, it's quite good quality. And this is vector. This is not vector format. This is just a bitmap. It's a PNG with transparency. And now let me illustrate what happens when you edit this without using smart objects. So for example, maybe I want to scale this. So I'm going to press Control T to scale this, and I'm going to just make it fit the screen area, press Enter to apply the transform. You can see it's pretty reasonably crisp. Considering the size of my document, but watch what happens if I transform this even more and make it very, very small, like this, for example, and apply the transform. You can still see the logo, it's very tiny there, but now let me pull it back up. Let me make it large again. So I'm Control T again and zooming in. As you can see, I have lost a lot of quality from my bitmap, so I can't get this back unless I do Control Z, undo, and my image has been pretty much destroyed. If I scale it again and make it very, very, very small and apply, Control T, bring it back up, transform it, so there you go. I've lost pretty much all of my image data. Now, editing with smart objects, is different because first you transform your object or your layer into a smart object, and then smart objects allow you to perform non-destructive transforms. You can scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective transform, or even warp a layer without losing original image data or quality, because the transforms that you apply will not affect the original data. They will affect the smart object, but inside of the smart object your data remains untouched. So let me illustrate this. I'm going to delete this layer now, and I'm going to go back and bring this logo in again, Control Paste. And now, before you do anything, so when you bring a new image into your document or a new bitmap from somewhere that you want to use and manipulate, before you even do anything with it, just go to the Layers panel. If you don't see it, you can press F7 or go to Windows, Layers. So when you paste something, it creates a new layer with the pasted data in addition to whatever you had before. So before you even transform this at all, you right click on your layer and select Convert to Smart Object. You can see now the icon of the layer has changed to reflect that. And let me show you now what happens when I do the same transform I showed you just before if I apply these on a smart object. So Control T to transform. I'm going to make it small, even very, very, very small, like that. Apply the transform. You can see the logo is right in there. So if I Control T again to transform and bring it back up, look at that. I have preserved the quality of my image, of the quality of the data that I brought into my document. I've preserved that. So even if I make it so small that you can barely see it, I am not even losing any quality at all with my transforms. I can't see it right now, but if I bring it back, scale it back up, my data is preserved and the quality is maintained. So this is one of the benefits of using smart objects. This is what's called non-destructive editing. So you are making transforms, you are making changes to your data, but you're not affecting the original data that you brought in. Of course, downside of this is that your Photoshop files, your PSD files, will be larger because they will preserve all of the data, even though you are using maybe this logo in a tiny tiny corner somewhere, the full data of the image is preserved in this document. So you have the freedom later to make this larger or use it in some other place without losing your quality. And another benefit of using with smart objects in Photoshop, you can also apply filters and non-destructive filtering. You can work with vector data. You know, if you import some vector artwork from Illustrator and that, you know, convert that into a smart object, it will preserve your vector data. It will not rasterize. It will not transform that into a bitmap. So you always have the highest quality objects editing in Photoshop. Another one that I'm going to illustrate right now, another benefit of using smart objects is that you can edit a smart object, and if you duplicate it and use it in other places in your document, it will make the same changes to all of those linked smart objects. So let me show you. If I just scale this a bit and duplicate this layer, I'm going to right click and duplicate layer, and I'm going to just make different copies of it in my documents, maybe use it in a few different rotations and positions and everything else. And then with all these smart objects, I decide that I maybe want to change the light or the color or contrast or something on my original object. So if I had regular layers here, despite the fact that I've lost quality now, I would have to apply the same thing to all of them. But look at this. If I go on the layers and double click on this, it brings me inside of that smart object, so I can edit this individually. So let me, for example, make it inverted. So I've inverted this bitmap just for illustration purposes. I have inverted it, and now I close this smart object. I apply the save, yes. So look at this. All of the instances of that smart object have been edited and updated to reflect my changes that I've done on either one of them. So this is another benefit of smart objects. You can edit one of them and it automatically updates all of the linked instances of that object. Of course, a way to prevent that, if you don't want that to happen, is to go to one of them and you can maybe take it out of a smart object and render it, rasterize it, for example, like this. Yeah. So if I go back into my original object and invert it back and close and save, now the one that I have rasterized, of course, isn't changed. So thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on the benefits of using smart objects in Photoshop, and I encourage you to make them part of your workflow when you work in Photoshop, because this way you preserve the quality of the images that you import into your document, and it gives you freedom later to make changes and adjust them and scale them and do whatever without having to track down the original file again and start from scratch. So I hope this tutorial was useful for you. Thank you for watching. See you next time.